Good morning, Central Coast. What a week it's been. What a week we have to come. So how are you guys doing? Really, how are you doing? I'm hoping your answer was a positive answer, but I get it. It's not always, but isn't perspective important? It's some seriously powerful stuff, actually. I remember being in high school. I graduated in year 12 in, it would have been 1997. So if that gives you any indication of my age, you're doing quite well this Sunday morning. But I remember through my high schooling years hearing the commonly expressed thought that it's the power of the mind that holds the key to success, to achieving goals, to becoming everything you were destined to be. Now, I used to scoff at that thought, in particular around that sort of teenage era, and now I'm sort of torn on that idea. It's certainly unfair to speak unachievable promises, and I'm always cautious with what I say. I have despised hypocrisy since my teen years, and if I can avoid playing with the heart of others, you bet I will. I don't want to be the reason they question other people, particularly people who love God. But on this point, I can see that, there is certainly some value in implementing positivity and positive psychology into the everyday. So even if you've had a particularly tough week, I'm hoping and praying you've been able to see the rainbow through the clouds. And as cliche as that might sound, I really do hope you've been able to keep the right perspective. And if you've had a truly awesome week, yay, 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 and even a big yeehaw. God is good, isn't he? All the time. Yep, he sure is. Guys, let me introduce myself. I'm Lindy Jones, your Sunday morning host here at Rhema CC. Thanks for allowing us to do life with you. So today we're starting a bit of a more in-depth discussion that will actually probably carry over into the next few weeks. We're exploring how we become who we are, and wow, there's certainly some interesting thoughts, ideas, frameworks, and theories about how we become the people that we are. So the idea for looking into this as a concept on radio didn't come with a strike or bolt of lightning. It wasn't some grandiose idea that I had dropped on me in my sleep. No, the story isn't very exciting at all, actually. I was merely unpacking boxes from our move back in October last year, which, if I'm honest, were probably boxes still packed from several house moves ago. And, well, guess what I found? I found the birth order book written by Dr Kevin Leman. Now, what can I say? I flicked through it and thought, this is pretty cool. I know I've studied this stuff before, but wow, it's really interesting. So could it be that I am the way I am because I am a firstborn? We're going to look into that a little more shortly, so stick with me because it really is quite interesting. You may just find yourself nodding in somewhat agreement that yes, you can certainly see that there are characteristics typical of someone just like you, who is the oldest, the middle, or even youngest child. And what about the only child? Are there environmental factors that influence him or her to be who they have become? We're going to dig into this a little more shortly. So for now, though, we're just going to leave you with this. Ephesians 2:10, for we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. God's too, if we're really honest, which prepared in advance for us to do. I'll just read that again. Ephesians 2:10, for we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. As we explore who we are and how we've become all that we are, let's remember this. He knew what he was doing when he created us. Our birth order number, the culture, the gender, the social class, everything was planned for the purpose of doing what he has designed for us to do. Today, though, we'll start making sense of our birth order and why he may have placed us in our family of origin. Family of origin refers to the family that raised us, we grew with, that sort of thing, the way that we learnt about the world. Right now, this is Remind Me by Ginny Owens. So it's probably a good thing for us to do today, just be reminded. Anyway, see you guys after this. That was I'm Gonna Live by DJ Madge, and what a great choice. I could get quite deep over that one, but I'll just say that you bet we have a choice to live and to live well. Even for those of us who might be struggling with issues of mental health from time to time, maybe depression, anxiety, or other disorders, the beginning of change starts with the concept of choice. Recognising the dark stuff that lingers in our mind and doing everything that we can to challenge those thoughts while monitoring our behavioural responses. And that, my friends, is a therapy called cognitive behavioural therapy, one of the more commonly used modalities for dealing with specific concerns that impact mental health. I know I've said it before, but I'm still blown away by how much God reveals himself through Scripture and how he has addressed concerns of the human heart and mind, even before we took a deep interest as a species in the concept of science. 2 Corinthians 10:3-6 tells us the world is unprincipled. It's dog eat dog out there. The world doesn't fight fair, but we don't live or fight our battles that way. Never have and never will. The tools of our trade aren't for marketing or manipulation, but they are for demolishing that entire massively corrupt culture. We use our powerful God tools for smashing warped philosophies, tearing down barriers erected against the truth of God, fitting every loose thought and emotion and impulse into the structure of life shaped by Christ. Our tools are ready at hand for clearing the ground of every obstruction and building lives of obedience into maturity. Now, knowing God's word and God himself more intimately allows us to challenge the thoughts of despair, terror, deep sadness. All the messages that tell us we are worthless, have no hope, should just give up. All the messages that aren't of God can be shunned and exterminated when we know God's word. That doesn't mean it will be easy. That doesn't mean we won't give up from time to time, but the battle is already won. And we can cling to that truth with thanks and hope as we reflect on the awesomeness of God, the sacrifice of Jesus, and the knowledge that nothing, not even death, could hold him down. I still find that just amazing. This life offers hope, and hope starts with our faith. I've managed to derail my own train of thought there big time, but oh well, life is a gift. It's certainly worth acknowledging it. But back to business. So today I have introduced what we were discussing throughout this morning as we set out over the next few weeks to consider how we become who we are. And today we're talking birth order. In this segment of this morning's discussions, I'm throwing around the typical attributes of the firstborn. That would be me. I'm the eldest child in my family of origin, and I have to admit I found myself somewhat cringing as I read through and considered some of the typical traits of a firstborn. Now, I have to mention here that there are naturally a few variables that Dr. Leman addresses in his book, and that's called the Birth Order book. And there are probably others of consideration too, really. Any theories that I discuss here on a Sunday morning are indeed a theory. So there's variables in all of them. Today, these variables include the impact of what he describes as the dynamic fluid relationships existing between members of the family. It includes spacing between births of children, almost like separate families within one due to ages or stages being addressed at different points of time. And that is based on the biological changes or birth timing. Now, to combine these two aspects, we can observe the reality that having more than one family within a family, purely because of one set of children may have been born and then others have followed years later, the dynamics of the family may shift too. Instead of what is like a one or two parented family, the older children are more likely to take on a parenting role in addition to the actual parents. So there's a shift there too. I often say we almost have 3 families within one. My first 3 girls, then my next 2, and then the last 2. It's a bit of a weird dynamic, but it's also interesting to watch my older girls when they come home. All of a sudden, our youngest kids go from 2 parents to at least 5. And it's confusing for our youngest 2 at times because really it's been a long time since they've lived with all their siblings. But the dynamics quickly return to normal, if there is a normal, when it's just the 6 of us living under the one roof. It will be interesting to see how things unfold over the future years. There are other variables Dr. Leman suggests as being of significance too, and some of these include the sex of the children and where they are placed, for example. The firstborn son after 3 daughters, he observes whether there are elements of competition between siblings. He suggests the physical appearance of each sibling can impact the development of the rest of the children, as well as the individual in the family. There's a whole lot to this, and obviously we can only cover so much here, but definitely explore it a little further if there's any element of intrigue into birth order theory. It's really cool to look at. As we explore birth order this morning, these variables should be considered, yes, but let's get started. Do these traits sound normal to any of you? Do you feel responsible for tasks or activities and have a high level of self-expectation? Are you often thought of as a leader? Have you ever been described as aggressive? Maybe you are likely to be more compliant. Does everything have to be perfect before you feel that you have completed a task? Are you highly organised? Are you incredibly driven? Perhaps to the point that you'll sacrifice to be a success. Has that drive come at a cost? Perhaps to your health, your family, your other aspects of life? Are you a list maker, all in the name of running towards goals? Are you logical or scholarly in your approach to life? Do you like to know more to stay ahead? As I said, I am a firstborn, and there are some things here that I can agree with. There are others that I will at first think, nah, that's not me. And then I have a moment follow that challenges my first thought. I would have never thought of myself as scholarly or read up, but in truth, I'm absorbing, and usually out of interest, not just because I have to. Constantly, I'm wanting to seek and find out more information about all sorts of things. I actually go loopy when my brain isn't just doing. So what does this mean for the firstborn and their loved ones? It means that those of us who are a firstborn need to be mindful of our need to please others and ourselves. It means we need to sort of rein it in when we're a little too much at times. It means we need to grab hold of our humanity, admit with humility that we have flaws, and be willing to lower our natural tendency to expect a great deal from others. Our expectations don't necessarily align with those of the people we love, and instead of being critical, we need to do a bit of sort of a self-check-in and ensure that we are nurturing rather than nastying. Yeah, that is a made-up word that I've just come up with, but just to really focus in on just making sure that we nurture the relationships rather than being nasty. We need to ensure that we, as we raise our children, if we're parents, they know fully their presence overrides the expectations that we have of them. If we run a team in the workplace, we need to ensure we balance productivity with the assurance that our teammates are valued. You don't have team if people only move through fear. Aggression, as is noted as being a somewhat common trait of the firstborn, only drives fear. That's not what any of us want, really. So we have to think of new ways to deal with the anxiety or the frustration that we might be experiencing when others aren't driven in the same way that we are. Can I get really honest and deep here for a moment? A friend recently told me, and she was a pastor's wife for many years before exercising her awesomeness as a Christian community worker, so she gets it. Anyway, she told me that she loved how I handled the situation when our second daughter came home to tell us she was pregnant. Now, at the time, she was 20 and had only been with her boyfriend for a few months. That's my daughter. And oddly, I was in a very similar situation at the same age. It wasn't ideal, and it came after telling my kids constantly that they need to avoid all the same mistakes I made. I've always been honest with my kids about the dumb stuff I did as a teen, and let's just say it was really dumb stuff. And I think that part of me felt assured by that. I felt like I'd achieved by doing parenting with a different style than others. I was real and I was honest. Surely that would make the chances or improve the chances that my kids wouldn't end up in the same position I was in my early 20s as a young single mum of 2 babies. Surely that was sort of the mindset of where I was at. My ability to raise my kids, in my mind, depended on me doing things differently. And that firstborn tendency to show others how doing things right will pay off was my drive. Then my kid ended up pregnant, and suddenly I had to challenge myself in how I was going to handle it with her and also within myself. I spent most of her early childhood years when she was little promoting abstinence as an option because I had realised the power the alternative had on my life. It controlled me, and as a young mum, I decided to break free of that. So to hope and pray that your kids will make other choices than the world tells them is the norm, and then be faced with, they ignored my advice and decided to do things their way anyway. From a firstborn perspective, this was a bit of a crushing of confidence. I'd always felt that others were waiting for my failure as a mum, and there it was. That after some other big stuff had happened with another one of our kids, this was all evolving kind of one thing after the other. But I had a choice in that moment. I could either be so consumed with what others thought and my ability to lead and raise our family, and in Christian circles that can happen, or I could swallow my sense of pride and the expectations I have or had for my kids. And remember, they are human and will make dumb choices too from time to time because, look, let's face it, we're all human. In the case of my daughter's pregnancy, I also knew there really was an added bonus. And that added bonus was human life. And we would have the blessing of a whole new person to love. And my goodness, we do. He is such a cutie and melts you when he hugs at 8. He just holds you at 8 months and he sighs a big, deep sigh and goes, oh, and you just kind of go, oh my goodness, you are just too perfect. Firstborners, we might think we have a need to hold the direction of society in our hands. We may feel that we have the responsibility to lead and change and ensure right over wrong. But what we actually have a responsibility to do is remember what actually matters. So what is that? Our family, our friends, our church. It might be the roof over our head, transport to get around, and the need to clothe ourselves for comfort and care. It's our faith and willingness to both hear from and submit to the call of God. That is what matters. So if you're driven, ask yourself why. What are you getting from the chase? And what will be the outcome? Will the outcome be worth it? Are there ideas in your mind of what success looks like? And do you need to reframe those ideas to be a more suitable understanding that simple is okay? Simple is actually really cool. For those living with a firstborn, bless you. And as they say in the Bible Belt of the USA, where my husband is from, bless your cotton socks. You guys have probably put up with way too much from us firstborns. We don't mean to be harsh or have high expectations, so I apologise on behalf of those who are just like me. This week I walked into Hope Cottage. It's a not-for-profit that we run at church that has a food bank, community lunch, that sort of thing. And I'd actually been away for a couple of days. The signs had been moved around. The register area for customer purchase was all sort of flipped into different space. The outside area of the cottage was cluttered and messy. The table needed to be cleaned. Yes, that firstborn nature in me saw the faults, and because it's something I care about, I found myself agitated. I spoke to my husband on the phone to have a whinge, only to discover he was behind a few of those discovered changes. So then I was ticked off even more. Surely he could have seen what was important to me and the fact that the flow of the building had to meet my expectations. Surely. So when he kept talking, because he likes to do that, and usually when I'm on the other end of the phone thinking, yeah, cool, this is nice, but I have stuff to do, I simply said, I need to get off here and get things sorted because no one else is here and I need to get how I like it. And it won't matter what you say right now, I'm in a bad mood and I have to sort it out. Again, my expectations overrode the understanding that there were reasons changes were made to the signs. The crumbs on the table meant that someone or some people had been connecting there while they sat and chatted. The register area was easily fixed and was only changed purely because we have other interest groups using it, such as AA meetings. And they needed that access to that part of the building. And really the fact that they show up each week to make such honourable changes to their lives should override my selfish frustration that sometimes tables were moved. But yeah, I can see how my need to have everything perfect in that part of my life may have been influenced by the fact that I'm a firstborn and appreciate the wow factor. We've got to weigh it up and remember people over situations of frustrations. That goes for the firstborns and those who live with a firstborn. Hold us into account if we're moody and frustrated. Ask us if we're ticked off because we're genuinely upset or because our own expectations, the goals we have, aren't met. And that can be by ourselves or others. Firstborns, we can use our leadership tendencies for good. We just have to remember other people in the process. People over problems. Always people. And before that, God. Maybe I should suggest God before, during and after. Always people and always God. And we can always ask God to hear Him and see Him more. This is a great way to start. This is More of You by Jimmy Cravity. That was Awake My Soul by Hillsong Worship. And what a great way to start. It's always refreshing to be stirred a little by the Spirit of God, huh? Well, sometimes it can be an agonising experience, I guess, if we're really honest, particularly when it means we need to confront changes that need to be made and then to have to make them, well, that's a whole other ball game. But alas, God has promised that he will work all things for good for those who love him. Welcome back this Sunday morning. We're in for a reasonably comfortable day. I have to admit it's been a pretty uncomfortable the last few days, hasn't it, with the temperatures just being crazy. We had a Wednesday, I think it was. Yeah, Wednesday would have been. We had was kind of like week 2 of Hope Cottage reopening now. We have a shop that we have to keep sort of limit numbers because it is sort of smallish, but we had people waiting outside, so we transformed it into sort of Aussie Day, and we tried to make the best of a situation, but man, it was not a good temperature to have lots of people coming out just to kind of hang out together. But yeah, it was nice to take some time as an organisation to spend some time being thankful for this nation that we live in, and I hope you guys got an opportunity to do that. I know that the whole Aussie Day debate can be a big one for some people, but I just think it's so important just to be thankful for being able to get up and just enjoy this awesome land that we live in, because we've got lots of pretty cool advantages. And man, just the backdrop of where we live. I woke up this morning and just spent some time. I don't normally do this. I'm normally straight into it, but I spent some time just sitting in front of the sun rising and just watching and just being like, wow, this is amazing. The views that we have just around us, just, with the water, with the, we're a lucky bunch here on the Central Coast. That's all I can say. So this morning we're actually talking birth order, which is a little bit different to kind of it's a bit of a different conversation compared to weather. Now, we were just talking previously about the firstborns and how we firstborns can have these standards of ourselves that can at times be a little bit, maybe a little bit ridiculous if we're really honest. But yeah, I think it's interesting how where we are born in our family order can just alter who we become. And that's sort of where we're going with everything over the next few weeks. It's sort of that theme of I am who I am because. And today, as I said, we're looking at the theories related to birth order and even just our family of origin and just the way that influences who we become as adults and even the decisions that we make as teenagers or, just how we approach life, I guess. So to move into the second-borns or even just the middle-born, if we just look at that. Now, it's a bit of a weird one for me because I look at this and my family of origin, there was 3 of us, so it's pretty simple. It's pretty, if you apply the theories to it, you've got your firstborn, your middle, and you've got your youngest. And I can certainly see traits of all of us in my brother and my sister and myself. Yeah, it is interesting to just kind of laugh at how we become who we become. But it is interesting too. But as I said, my family, my own children, we have 7 kids, and it's almost like we've had 3 different families in a lot of ways because there's been a bit of an age gap. So it has made things different, and the variables are mentioned by Dr. Leman, who actually put this sort of theory together, and he wrote the book, the Birth Order book. So that's one thing I just refer to when I'm sort of putting this together. But let me ask you, if you're a middleborn, so that could be your second to, in our case, well, we've got lots of middleborns, so, and I've seen different traits in a few of them at different times. Let me ask you this. Let's just start with this actually. The classic middleborn is apparently quite relational. Would you say you're relational if you're one of the middle-born children in your family? Do you think you're a bit of a people pleaser? Do you hate confrontation at times? Do you kind of find that you like to keep life sort of just rolling with it, just peace at any price type thing? These characteristics are typically, according to the theory, the middle-born type, the characteristics of the person that we're talking. The middle-born is usually quite calm. They sort of just roll with it. They're just quite amicable. They go with the flow. They're down to earth. They're great listeners. They're sort of skilled at seeing both sides of a problem and eager to make everybody happy. That makes them good mediators, according to the theory, and negotiators because they can see all sides. So let me ask you guys, if you're a middle-born, how does that work for you? Can you see some common denominators there? Are there things that make you kind of go, yeah, that's me? Let's look at some of the negatives for the middleborns. According to this theory, if you like, middleborns tend to be less driven than their older sister or brother. They're kind of more eager to be liked or be at least happy, with or sort of accepted by people. They also have a tendency to find it difficult to lay those boundaries down. They can sort of drift into becoming codependent as they try to please really everybody. They're not good at making decisions that will offend others, so there is that need to just sort of play the nice guy or just get along with everyone. They also tend to blame themselves when others fail. I find this one interesting too. I find that a different aspect. And obviously I'm not a middle-born child. I've lived with one. I've lived with a couple of them actually. So I lived with my brother, and my husband is a middle-born. So it is interesting to sort of see things and kind of go, does that really fit? I would say, looking at the theory, I would actually think that my husband is more like a firstborn than a middle-born, but there are certain traits at certain times I think, yeah, I can see it, you're the middle child there. But yeah, it is interesting. It's just these silly theories that we come up with, but they help us to understand the world and how we can apply ourselves more. It's just good to sort of tap into just ideas and think about how that might impact how we perceive the world, how we interact, all that sort of stuff. So certainly dig deep and do a little bit more research yourself if you're finding yourself going, yeah, this is kind of interesting. Things sort of make sense to me when I look at that or hear. This is normal for someone that is born in this particular place in this particular stage of my family. And as I said previously, obviously, when you look at God's placing of who we are in the family of origin, there's a reason for it, and it's kind of cool to see how we develop accordingly. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, guys, for now, and I'll just catch up with you guys after this. Don't forget that we have a new beginning with God Glory coming starting at 8:32. So stick around for that one. And we do have church on the radio this morning too at 10 o'clock. So if you can't get to church, I'm sure that it would be quite a cool thing to sort of just tune in here and just, see what's happening on the coast, different churches on the coast. Good way to find things out. Anyway, I'll be back soon. Enjoy this. Welcome back, Coasties. You're joining us here at Rhema CC. I'm Lindy Jones, your Sunday morning host. I'm hoping and praying you're able to ease into the day reasonably well after quite a few scorches this week. It just leaves you exhausted, doesn't it? I walked out the back to put some meat in our freezer at our house. We have a freezer in our shed. And I came back in. I was literally from head to toe just covered in sweat, and I was probably only walking, 15, 20 metres? It was crazy. Anyway, here's to hoping that today is a lot more comfortable for you guys. This morning we've been talking about birth order. I'm sort of throwing this around as an exploration of a bigger area of thought, which we will cover over the next few weeks. The bigger idea is sort of exploring the concept of I am who I am because. So we'll be talking family of origin and its impact today. Well, partially. Obviously, it's a big area of conversation. There's a need to cut back a great deal. And my goodness, that is hard for me when it's a topic of personal interest. Pretty sure my family would be rolling their eyes as I speak on this, but that's okay. I'm used to those eye rolls. We're all different, huh? My eyes sort of glaze over at any tech talk because, well, it's another language to me. I've got no idea. But then it's also odd how the older I get, the more likely I am to be open to the ideas of learning more in the way of gadgets and technological advances. I heard once, not sure if it's entirely true, that our peak age for learning is actually sort of late 40s, 50s and even 60s. So look out, world, I'm going to be intelligent at some point. I'm joking. My husband never seems to find me real funny anyway, so yeah. Anyway, so we've thrown around the idea or looked at previously the typical firstborn. She or he can often be found to demonstrate more sort of leadership type tendencies or personalities. Sometimes that can come across as aggressive. Sometimes the sense of responsibility can play out with others running them over. I'm having a shocker this morning. I say we because I am a firstborn myself, can often be more serious, be pedantic about details, and find ourselves needing to negotiate real and appropriate measures of expectations. They can be of ourselves, these expectations, or of others. Then we looked at the middles. These guys, those born in between others, are found, according to Dr. Leman, as being people pleasers, keeping things light and amicable. They're negotiators, often good listeners and down-to-earth personalities. I'm thinking of several middles middle sort of people at the moment, as I'm saying this, my husband and brother being examples of that. And I have to say that, I don't know that I completely agree with all of these thoughts, but there must be something to it, because Dr. Leman had been a psychologist for over 25 years when he wrote his book, The Birth Order Book. The negatives of middle children, they can be that they can be less driven to prove, at least in their mind. They can also drift easily in codependency and struggle with boundaries. In turn, I guess you could say that they struggle with making decisions that may impact or influence others. Having said all this, middles are also competing with the eldest, who is likely to be striving to impress, or battling with the youngest, who is seen to be getting away with the actions that he or she would have had. Middles get creative because they have to. Sometimes it turns into a secretive side, but they're forced to draw attention differently, so they do. But how much of this is birth order, and how much is it just people evolving, just their own individual person? Who knows? Now we have the baby of the family. I bet those who are older in the family are sort of rolling their eyes as I introduce that. I know when I think of all the times I've thought I have a baby of the family and been incredibly aware of my parenting style to ensure that my baby didn't turn out the stereotyped way a youngest is said to, only to discover that actually they weren't going to be my baby. Yes, we have to laugh at these things, but we also have to admit that yes, there seems to be some truth to them. So after 7 kids, I've had a lot of babies. I could go on and on about how I missed out on the dancing classes or the cool trips across the ocean because my parents were in a different financial state or position when they raised my sister compared to me. I could mention that I allow my 2 youngest in particular to get away with not eating the dinner I've prepared because, well, I no longer have the energy to fight in the way I would have as a younger, more determined mother with my older kids. The baby or youngest of the family is known for being the one who will probably have a pet name 30 years on, can often be known as less financially responsible, and often as a result of being spoilt. The beauty of the last born, though, as explained by Dr. Leman, is that they are often the most social, outgoing, and capable of having a great time. Yep, that'd be my mum and my sister. Are the coincidences? Or maybe they're God's design. Proverbs 19:21 says that many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. We might have plans for ourselves or our children, but God knows what He wants to teach each of us as individuals, and it actually starts from the moment of conception. The prayers that my parents prayed for me were probably different than the prayers they prayed for my brother or my sister. But our birth order, told you I'm having a shocker, probably influenced that too. Now I'll leave you now to think a little further on that. Right now, you're listening to Lindy Jones on Rhema CC, but I will see you guys really soon. Well, a big welcome back to you guys, and thanks for joining us here at Rhema CC. I know I am a little biased, but I recently drove through 4 areas of Australian coastal regions and listened to 4 different Christian radio stations. Now, there's some great stuff out there, but I can't lie. I listened and I thought, man, I love my Rhema CC. I guess I am biased, but it is true. And what can I say about the new summer songs that were just added to our playlist here recently? I absolutely loved it and still love it. I suppose I should introduce myself again. I'm Lindy and I'm here until 10 a.m. this morning. At 10 o'clock we cross over to our church on the radio time slot. It's always good, like a good way to get a feel for what God is doing in this region. Now, over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at theories or frameworks that might be aligned with how we are becoming or who we have become. Today we've been talking birth order and how when we were or where we were born within our family, it's likely to impact our development as a person. So as adults, we can start to put the dots together because it suddenly makes a great deal of sense that we are who we have needed to become as we learn how to make sense of the world that's around us. So let's now head on to the only child. Now, according to Dr. Leman, the only child is a little like the oldest child amplified, and amplified a great deal. Now, none of this that we're covering today is meant to be of offence in any way, but rather just something to humour ourselves about and just sort of sit on and just think about and work out how we can do life better with other people and with ourselves. It's nice to kind of just check in sometimes and think, okay, where do I fit in that? How do I make things better based on theoretically where I would sort of sit in this? So based on my birth order. So when Dr. Leman suggests that the only child is a little like the oldest child 3 times over, what he is suggesting is that there is a need to be an even greater perfectionist, even more sense of responsibility, and an only child tends to associate with those older than they are much more with ease, because really that's what they're used to. Now, personally, I can't say a great deal on this because it is so far from my understanding that I can't comprehend what it must be like to be an only child. But other characteristics or personality traits to consider include, and this again is suggested by Dr. Leman, being task-oriented, well-organised, highly conscientious, and dependable. They are known to be keen on the facts, the ideas, and they like to embrace responsibility. However, they are also known to be more unforgiving, tough to handle, demanding, and unable to handle criticism too well. The truth is, there are positives and negatives about all the dynamics of sibling rivalry. Oh my goodness, it's going to be a shocker. I'm almost done anyway, guys. And placing. It's a matter of remembering our observed positives and negatives that truly change things. We have to remember that there is a bit of a science to who we become, but ultimately God has ordained the positioning in our family, and really from the word go. I am praying that if you've been tuning in this week, you'll be able to take away some of these ideas and really contemplate how you can do life a little better based on some insight into the typical of your birth order position. I'm going to leave you with this, 1 Peter 2:9, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of the darkness into his wonderful light. Have a great week, listeners. I'll see you back here same time next week. Thanks for tuning in to Rhema CC. I'll see you then. Bye, guys.